Hi, Nicole. Hi, Adam. How are you?
Hi.
All right, very good.
I'm really excited to talk to both of you because I understand that there's been a lot of exciting developments. And I think just to kind of get us started, why don't you both tell us about what the mission and values of your organizations are? And what are your key objectives and interests?
Great. I'll go first. So Transformative Tech is a global organization that is dedicated to bridging the connection between well-being and technology. We do that by focusing on founders, clinicians, scientists, investors, basically a community of people that are applying a tech for mental health, emotional health, and social health worldwide.
Perfect. And so NeuroTechX is a not-for-profit organization. We have a global network of about 18,000 people now, and essentially experts and enthusiasts in neurotechnology. So our mission is really to facilitate the advancement of neurotechnology by providing key resources and learning opportunities, and really being leaders on a global basis in our field. So we have three pillars, which are community, education, and professional development. And through an exclusive relationship with a for-profit entity called NeuroTechX Services, we can also provide recruiting and consulting services.
That's really interesting, both of you. Maybe just to kind of understand what kind of led to this partnership developing, why don't you each tell me what you observed in your own communities that led you to kind of create this joint offering?
Yeah, so Transformative Tech is also a global nonprofit. And by supporting the builders of people who create these types of technologies, one of the things that we've really seen is the key pain point is finding people to build with, whether that's as co-founders, as employees, or as companies progress key senior roles. And so we heard this over and over and over again from the community, people looking for great people to build the future with. We've been aware of NTS and NTX for quite some time. And as sister organizations, because we work together a lot, we were aware of the job board that they had, and then also the recruiting services that they had started to provide. It just seemed like a really natural fit to bring those two together so that we could really serve our audience, serve our members, so they could build the technology that the world really, truly needs.
Thank you, Nicole. And I would say that for us, yes, a few years ago, what started really happening is we were proud of seeing our community grow. The field was growing, people were also learning with us, and we had a diversity of seniority and technical expertise. So what we try to do is to say, well, we have access to quite a lot of interesting job opportunities that we see on the market. It could be, corporate, it could be startup, academia. We really wanted to put a platform together to make sure our members could essentially find something that's highly relevant for us and that could allow them to really use what they've learned. So as everything has been growing in tandem, I would say that the field is growing, we have more members, and our job board is actually very, very popular. Just last year, we had over 1,000 positions, which were in the field of neurotechnology. Within the field, we have any types of use cases and applications. It could be something clinical and highly technical. It could be also consumer. And so when we were thinking about, continuing to expand, it was kind of an obvious choice to collaborate with TransTech and Nicole, given that they had such a strong community too. They were also looking at expanding that type of offering. And it was kind of a natural fit, I would say, to kind of join forces to make sure that members of both community could benefit from seeing what's really out there in the market and find great opportunities, as Nicole mentioned, in companies and labs, but also in some cases to find co-founders actually for some startups.
Yeah, one of the things that we have in common is that for neurotech and then also well-being tech, a lot of what's happening is the identification of, measurement, and tracking of biosignals. So that might be heart rate variability, EEG, galvanic skin response. There's a long list of things that give insight into the state, the psychological and neurological state of a human being. And so the other thing that makes this a really smart partnership is that our communities are actually kind of tracking the same kind of data. So it's sort of, apples and apples. And so that makes a lot of sense, because in the wider recruiting world and the wider world of people who are looking at these things, really having someone who understands both the biosignals, which takes a little bit to really understand that, even if you aren't a scientist, and the mission-driven element of our community. So what we were looking for is expertise plus vibe and tribe. And those two things, there isn't anyone who could help us with talent and help our community with talent the way that NTX and NTS can.
No, so that it's absolutely true. And what's interesting is that we also see different modalities coming together and startups going from one realm to the other. So one good example would be, the intersection of AR, VR, and BCIs, brain computer interfaces. So we see also more startups trying to bring different types of technologies together in order to provide something different. So this also added, I would say, to how many intersections we found between the types of startups and members that are in both communities. We also have digital health, which is a great trend and obviously has quite a bit of overlap with wellness. So it's interesting as the years go by to see also kind of all those dimensions coming together and again, adding to kind of our willingness and the need for communities like ours to come together and really try to provide an integrated solution.
Yeah, and also what we've seen, especially over the last 2 years with COVID, and people also taking an increased interest in prevention, the walls and also the way the companies are evolving, the walls between direct to consumer and what typically has been called health are dropping. And you see DTC companies acquiring consumer health companies. You see consumer health companies going directly to or traditional health companies going into D2C. And so it's becoming one space. And so that's why this partnership makes really great sense. And we're excited for you to check out the job boards and to also, let us know how we can help you build the technology that people really need.
Okay. And then because you are both so well connected to your communities, I'd be curious about what kind of feedback you've heard from both companies and from talent in your respective communities with regards to your offerings.
Yeah, well, we're just getting started on our side, but I found I was getting a lot of personal calls about people looking for talent or people looking for roles. And so I was fielding a lot of those, and it was just more than I could do on my own. And people are required to build anything. And so I began to look for a partner and a solution, and actually got an email from you guys about the job board, I think, because I'm on your list or something. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I'm looking for.
Yeah, and on our end, since we've started the job board, almost 3 years ago, we've gotten a lot of thank yous, which has been a great feeling because, even people that are, whatever the level of seniority, we used to hear quite a few, what is out there, and some people are curious, right? I mean, across, as we said, clinical and consumer, it could be also neurofeedback, neuromodulation, neuroprosthetics, wellness. There are a lot of different things that people are interested in and that they could be qualified for different opportunities. So just having the job board in itself is quite a tool for people to get a sense of the variety of opportunities. And we're global, right? So what can I get in my geography internationally? What if that's also an interesting one. If I want to continue research, or what if I want to go in a startup, and what can I find there? So it's really been a great opportunity. And so again, we really encourage people to go on our job board. It's a great opportunity to find different potential, next steps, I would say, for people that are looking to change or just to understand what's there. And in recruiting in general, beyond the job board at NeuroTechX, with the help of NeuroTechX services, we also provide extended services. So we can provide also headhunting and very detailed search, which can be quite useful if people are looking for candidates, which can be let's say, highly technical or even very senior roles in the C-suite. So that's also something that goes beyond the job board to make sure that any need can really be addressed.
Yeah, and you know, and what I would say too, for anyone who's out there and has, you know, spent the last 2 years thinking about and looking at how the world is changing. I mean, I think a lot of us in the last 2 years settled down in the time that we had and said, what do I really want to do? And what do I really, truly want to build? And what is my true contribution to this world? How do I want to spend my time? And so, like many of us, and you know, everyone in this period, many people are beginning to think that they want to build the technology that humans really truly need for mental, emotional, and social health. So if that is you, if you have been thinking about that and you're thinking about 2022, new year, new you, what you might like to build, this is really your opportunity. The amount of investment that has come into the space, the amount of opportunities that are in the space, what's really needed are people, really needed, like everybody needs people. So come on in, jump in, like this is your moment and the opportunities are there. And that's what you'll find on our job board, on NTX's job board. So, you know, jump on in.
That's great. Now, I mean, we've sort of teased around what it is exactly, but let's talk about what the actual offering is. So how does a company go about recruiting niche talent at attractive salaries from your communities?
What we found from our members is that the relevance of the position and the culture of the company really matter. So what we find sometimes is, you know, a company recruiting, being a startup, having salaries that are interesting, but being worried about being outcompeted by potentially large players. And they come to us and say, how do I find the best talents with what I have? And so without going into detail into compensation packages, one thing that I think is always true is, and find the right people. They need to understand what you stand for. They need to understand your vision. They need to understand the field to some extent to understand why you're relevant. And so that's why we really try to match relevant people to relevant companies. We find that that makes a world of difference. And when we follow up with companies and candidates down the road, we find that that really match in terms of fit and interest and what the position can bring actually makes quite a big difference.
Yeah, and I would say, you know, one of the things that I love about NTS and NTX is that, you know, the mainstream, often what I've heard from the companies is that classic medical recruiters who would understand the bio data a little bit more, they might not be aligned on direct to consumer speed. They might not be aligned on mission alignment. You know, like the people who build this kind of technology are so passionate about changing the world. It really is a certain sort of mission aligned, impact oriented person. And so it's like, you know, they get people who are looking at really, really, really long timelines. And, you know, startups today have to move very, very quickly. So finding the balance between the two. And then on the other side, if you go to sort of like the really mainstream recruiters that do maybe, you know, traditional tech, general consumer tech, they just don't have the depth of understanding to really know if their candidate actually truly understands what skin conductance is. You know, like, and so, you know, this is like such a great, you know, specialty, and it's in a category that is absolutely on the rise.
And I would maybe add a word, I mean, to your point about kind of validating the fit and if things make sense, I would say, between a candidate and a company. As we mentioned earlier, we do headhunting types of projects too, which means that we would actually support the company in finding the candidates. So going through our proprietary database, using recruiter tools, and really making sure that we also give an interview, we validate the fit, And we find that that makes a big difference. So as executives and other members and companies are busy and don't always have the resources to go as both broadly as we do, but also in details as we might want to go, it can be quite useful to really come up with a short list and detailed reports, really outlining how great the different candidates that we believe have a great fit and that can answer all the technical needs are. And that way, when the second interview happens, it's much more interesting on both ends, I would say.
Great. Maybe just help me understand though, how are your job boards different from, a centralized job board like say LinkedIn?
Yeah, I mean, LinkedIn's really big and you have to go to a lot of different places. You kind of have to know exactly the company that you're looking for. It's much more difficult to say, I'm generally interested in this area, then what are the opportunities? So it's the difference between looking for a needle in a haystack and basically just setting up, walking up to an extraordinary buffet that's made for you. That's the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And at the end of the day, we want people to find what they're passionate about and what makes sense for them. So on our end, on the NeuroTechX side, what we always try to do is also have a healthy mix, I would say, of opportunities when it comes to the level of technicalities, the different use cases. And we also listen a lot to what the community says, but also startups are aware of our offering. So what we like is that as the field is evolving and we see kind of, some trends happening and some companies growing in some of the fields, the offering on the job board and the opportunities that are out there are also reflected. So there's really a true effort on our end to keep being relevant and current. Because, if you think about neurotechnology today versus a couple of years ago, without naming them, you have a couple of very big players that were not even in the field yet. You have a couple of decisions on the regulatory side, which had not been made yet. So the field has evolved so fast that it's the job board for us is also a way to really kind of showcase how the field is evolving. And as I said, it's a great way for people to just get a sense of what's really happening out there on the market.
Yeah. And so, for everyone, this is the age of bold action. Like, this is the age to build your dreams and to make a better world. So check out the job boards, get in touch, find the opportunity, and reach out, because this is the age of bold action.
Absolutely. I would echo that. We love to talk to startups, to larger companies, to investors, to candidates. Please reach out to us. We'd love to talk to you. And given the ongoing dialogue between NeuroTechX and TransTech, in any case, we will communicate with each other to make sure the opportunities are conveyed on both our platforms when possible.
Yeah.
Thank you both. I think you've both done such interesting work in getting your communities good opportunities, through this partnership and through your regular ongoing work. I'd be curious, both Nicole and Adam, what drove your personal interest into your respective fields, and how, what major changes have you observed in these fields over time?
I can go ahead. So my interest. In my case, so my background is actually on the strategic and financial side, and I've done a lot of business advisory for over 10 years before joining the NeuroTechX adventure. I had also been involved with a mental health foundation. So my heart was always about, trying to understand the brain, trying to solve significant, I would say, problems and challenges, and having worked with technology companies, medtech companies in that field, I just thought that neurotechnology was definitely one fascinating area, which was nascent, which had a lot of potential, and in which I would say a lot of the startups, companies, and candidates had such passion for changing the world that it was hard not to get involved. And so for me, it was really about supporting the community and growing, and then supporting the creation, the growth of NeuroTechX services, so to ensure that the ecosystem could grow. When we're talking about what has changed, many things could be said, but in a nutshell, I would say that companies have been able to raise Collaborations between labs and companies are growing. And another thing is the line between it, and I know, Nicole, you alluded to that, what's consumer and what's clinical and medical is getting blurrier and blurrier. And we've seen companies go from one to the other and collaborate. So what is just great about this is, I think, if you're an entrepreneur in the field or a candidate or someone trying to find a way to grow in the field, there's so many more opportunities that there were a few years ago. And again, through our initiatives with TransTech and NeuroTechX, we hope to be able to continue showcasing them in a way where people can really grow with the field, not just in general, but really also within the field, find really what they're interested in and trying to support and have an impact in the world.
Yeah. So my background is in video games, and I spent initially, before founding Transformative Tech, 14 years in core gaming. And that included overseeing World of Warcraft operations in China. And so then I went on a meditation retreat and had a really extraordinary experience and thought, oh, technology could make something like this more accessible. So it sort of sent me on a little bit of a journey through psychology and neuroscience, and really feeling like, there was an opportunity here. This was pre-Calm. This was when there was just Insight Timer out there. At the time when I got started, people absolutely did not believe that mental health and technology could go together. They absolutely didn't believe. Actually, there were a lot of people resistant to meditation and technology going together. There were just a few applications here and there. And it was considered really a radical concept that the inner landscape of a human being that there should and could be a role for technology. So I had, several years of being crazy, several years of being out there, then a few years of people starting to say, oh, this makes a lot of sense, but we don't really need it yet, or, the healthcare system will never change. And then suddenly COVID. So, COVID made me right. That's not the way I would have wanted it to go, but it happened. And so, in 2 years, the entire world has accepted that there is a role, not the only role, but that there is a role for technology in supporting and delivering mental health services, that there is a role for technology in supporting an enhanced remote work scenario. And not the only way, but we have to figure out how to help people, in this remote work world. And then, of course, with the advances in longevity and, AI, people thinking more and more about how we enhance cognition in all of the ways that we define it. So, in two years, there's that funny quote that's basically, sometimes, sometimes decades take days and sometimes days take decades. This was a case where, 2 years really sort of advanced, I think, the way the world thinks about technology and the human brain and mind, 7 years in 2 years. So that's really the evolution that I've seen. And with that, you've seen sort of like the onslaught of capital. You also have seen an increase in, because of what I mentioned earlier about people really thinking about what matters to them most. I think we were sort of like all racing around, many of us. And so people really thinking about what matters most. There's lots of people who are wanting to apply their talents to climate change, to, which is a large existential crisis. And also, to the state of the human mind is, one of the next big things, to address. And so you're getting really high quality talent that's very interested in their own happiness and the happiness of others, and not like a trite happiness, but sort of like, what do we have to do to bring deep satisfaction to more and more human beings. And that's actually tied to consumerism and a bunch of other things. So this is the moment. This is the time. It's the age
And
of boldness.
I would just add, one quick thing you made me think about, Nicole, is a few years ago, our collaborators, clients, partners were often neurotech companies, right? I mean, that was a close field in a way. Now, we talk with people in the medical space, pharma, but also retail, and a lot of also larger companies, right, have internal neurotech projects, want to collaborate with neurotech companies from wellness to the medical side. So there's a lot more collaboration and openness in the world. And so just on our end, when we think about, who are we talking to on a daily basis, the composition of that is quite different. And I think that's a good reflection. I absolutely agree, Nicole, of the openness that everyone is having towards these types of, digital technologies and healthcare and beyond that are actually now, being accessible and looked after by many, many different players out there.
Yeah, it's basically the biggest TAM in the world. Total addressable market. Everybody's got a brain. Everybody's got a mind. We all long, for happiness. We all long for meaning, whether we, know it or not. That's what happens in the human condition.
Yeah, I think on that note, I'll stop it here and say thank you both for your time. And yeah, I'm looking forward to participating in this partnership and seeing how it evolves and how much it contributes to each of our communities.